While playing video games, players are given a sense of security when it comes to the events that take place during the game. They know that they are the main character, embarking on a quest that they will eventually complete come the game's end. So, what happens when the game decides to throw a spanner in the works and present a moment that completely shocks and surprises the player? These moments will come without warning and go completely against what the player has grown to expect over the course of their playtime. And in a way, that is what makes these moments so great and what makes them so memorable. While many games have incredible moments, it's the ones that shock you and take you off guard that you'll be talking about for days on end afterwards. Now, with this list, there are a few simple rules. Only moments from video games I've played, and only one entry per franchise. Also, before we begin, I feel like it's appropriate to say that there are major spoilers ahead, so be warned. Now, with that out of the way, let's get started. In 2009, Rocksteady Games released the fantastic Batman Arkham Asylum, and many praised it as a near-perfect Batman game. And so in 2011, they followed up this success with perhaps an even better game, Batman Arkham City. The game was widely loved as it allowed players to fly around from rooftop to rooftop, really giving the players the feeling of being the Caped Crusader. So it can be expected that the game would follow a fairly obvious story of the Joker doing something dastardly and evil, and Batman having to stop him. However, by the end of the story, the game decides that it wants to switch this up on the player. Back in the events of Batman Arkham Asylum, the Joker injects himself with the Titan formula, which sequentially led to one of the worst bosses in video game history, but also, as a result, it has poisoned the Joker's blood, and is slowly killing him. Ever the master villain, the Joker also ends up giving the Batman the same affliction by performing a blood transfusion, and so Batman must find a cure to save his life. By the end of the game, you have found 2 cures and used one to cure yourself, but you still have one remaining, and so are faced with an interesting situation, in which Batman has the choice to save the life of his arch-villain. However, in a shocking turn of events, the Joker decides to make the choice for you, jumping on Batman's back, causing him to drop the vial of the cure, thus sealing his fate. The Joker does make an attempt to get some of the spilled cure, but to no avail. Batman then reveals that he would have saved the Joker's life instead of letting him die, and with a cough and a splutter, that's it. The Joker dies. He just dies. This is a massive moment for more than one reason. For starters, Batman is known for never killing any one of his enemies, because that's not what he's about, and so to have his arch enemy die right in front of him is massively devastating. Also, this is the Joker we're talking about. Batman's greatest enemy just dying, and not even in a grand way that would be expected of one of the greatest villains ever made. He just dies. With the last laugh and a smirk, the Joker is gone. Now, the Mother series of games is known for having an emotional tone and having moments that really impact and shock the player. And out of the 3 games, Mother 3 has by far the most moments that shock and impact the player. From Hinawa's death to the reveal that Pokey had survived all that time and is now immortal, this game will take you on a wild emotional roller coaster that will have you gripped from beginning to end. And speaking of the end of the game, the biggest shock comes once the player has reached the final boss, the Masked Man. Throughout the whole of the game, the player is left with 2 major questions. 1. What happened to Klaus, Lucas's brother from the beginning of the game? And 2. Who is this masked man that has been chasing your party around for the entirety of the game? Well, at the end of the game, both questions are promptly answered, as, at the final Dragon Needle, the masked man reveals himself to be Klaus, who was subjected to brainwashing at the hands of the game's main villain Pokey. This then leads to an extremely emotional moment where the two of you are fighting over who gets to pull the final dragon needle, where no matter what you do, you are helpless to stop his assault and can only block and heal. Eventually, you'll begin to hear the voice of your dead mother Hinawa attempting to snap Klaus out of it, but to no avail. Eventually, your father Flint stands up and tries to also snap Klaus out of it, and then proceeds to take 2 massive hits, and still nothing happens. Lucas then begins to start being able to do damage again, and eventually Hinawa gets through to Klaus, and Klaus begins to remember all the times he spent with Lucas, and begins to break the mind control's hold. This final part of the fight is so heartbreaking as you get dialogue boxes like Lucas feels heartbroken and Lucas closes his eyes tightly. This whole moment is shocking to the player as they have to watch as Lucas's own brother attacks him relentlessly with no regard for his brother or his life. This moment only gets more shocking when Klaus finally snaps out of his mind control and fires a lightning bolt directly at Lucas, which he knows will be reflected back by the Franklin badge, dealing mortal damage to Klaus. Klaus then embraces Lucas as he succumbs to his injuries and falls. This entire sequence is so shocking and emotional, as the entire game you've been experiencing all these horrendous things alongside Lucas and his party, and so you're invested in these characters so much that the final moment is enough to send many gamers over the edge. It also doesn't help that upon pulling the final dragon needle, it begins the end of the world, or supposedly. The main characters are apparently alive as you talk to them after the final screen, but still, this entire ending is completely shocking, as you have a brother being revealed to be one of the main antagonists of the game, him having no regard for hurting his brother, killing himself, and then the other brother who's just lost his mother and his brother throughout the course of the game, pulling the final needle thinking he'll save the world, when it looks like he ended it. Yeah. Mother 3 is not that much of a kid's game. Let me tell you that. Now, it's not really a surprise that an RPG would have at least one shocking moment in there somewhere. I mean, hey, most of the time the main crux of the plot is the shocking reveal or plot twist that happens towards the end of the game. So, in saying that, shouldn't that mean that as the genre goes on and more RPGs are released, that the shock just goes down? Well, not really. As long as it's still interesting and comes out of nowhere, the shock moment will still do just that, shock. And with that, we come to Xenoblade Chronicles. For those of you who haven't played this wonderfully created RPG, let me get you up to speed a bit. You play as a boy named Shulk, who was orphaned when his parents assumedly died, discovering an ancient weapon known as the Monado. He then is raised by Dixon, who found him in the cave along with the Monado and eventually becomes heir to the Monado, previously wielded by the hero of the town called Dunban. Him and his band of friends set off as they hope to save their home, the dormant titan known as the Bionis, from the Mechon, a race of robotic creatures that have waged war on Bionis, led by their leader Egil. Along the way, you make some new friends and eventually reach Prison Island. You meet with an ancient giant called Zanza, in hopes that he can unlock the secret of the Monado to further help their fight against the Mechon. In exchange, Shulk must release him from his chains. However, he's killed by the metal-faced Mechon just after he is freed. Remember this, because this is important for later. Fast forward to the party arriving at the Mechonis core to face off against Egil and his Mechon Yaldabal. The party defeats him and Shulk then makes him an offer for peace between the two factions. Egil begins to see sense and begins to accept Shulk's offer, when Shulk is then shot in the back by Dixon, a man who really lives up to his name. He explains that he is one of Zanza's disciples, and that it is time for Lord Zanza's return. Egil tries to thwart Dixon's plan, but to no avail, as the recently awoken Zanza steps up and knocks down Egil in one swift motion. Dixon and Zanza then explain that Shulk was always just an empty vessel who had his life force sucked out of him when he and the group, which contained his parents by the way, found the Monado. Then Zanza inhabited the young Shulk's body, only to have Dixon then come and find him as prior to Lord Zanza's instructions. Shulk was then raised by Dixon to ensure that he would be ready to wield the Monado, so that when the time came, he could resurrect Zanza. Dixon would merely only have to kill Shulk to release him, something he had no problem in doing. Egil again tries to stop Zanza by unleashing the full power of the Mechonis on him, but Zanza is prepared and awakens the Bionis, and the two titans clash once again, with Zanza overpowering Egil's weakened state and ultimately killing him. The reason that Zanza's reveal is so shocking is that it comes completely out of nowhere, as Zanza was assumed dead after Prison Island, and also the fact that we assumed Zanza was just this massive giant dude, when in fact he is the spirit of the Bionis and the Monado. In fact, he was living in Shulk the entire time, and that was why Shulk could use the Monado and have all these life-saving visions throughout the game. Dixon also takes no trouble in killing Shulk, who he's raised as a surrogate son, and in fact seems to take pleasure in taking the boy's life so that Lord Zanza can live, betraying everyone. This moment also shows the true power of Zanza, as he can completely eliminate Egil and overpower the Mechonis, making for a truly grand entrance for the true antagonist of Xenoblade Chronicles. Now, brace yourselves guys, because I'm about to talk for the first time about a first-person shooter. And that shooter is Halo Reach, Bungie's send-off to the Halo franchise. The game acts similarly to the recent Rogue One: A Star Wars Story, in which it is a prequel that explains the events that end with the beginning of the first entry of the series. And like Rogue One, many if not all of the main characters meet their deaths by the end of the game. None of these, however, is more memorable than Noble Six's, your character throughout the game. At the end of the game, you watch as the Pillar of Autumn leaves the planet Reach, and your character is left on the planet to hold off the Covenant, to ensure the ship's safety. The credits then roll, and you are left to assume Six's fate throughout the credit sequence, assuming that he eventually probably met his end at the hands of the Covenant forces. However, after the credits are finished, you find yourself back on Reach, playing as Noble Six in one final mission, named Lone Wolf. You get to play as Noble Six as he tries to hold back the Covenant for as long as he can, and if you're good enough, you can actually hold out for quite a while here. But eventually, as the damage begins to build up, you can see cracks and scratches covering your helmet, and eventually, Six makes his final stand, and he certainly doesn't go down easy. This moment is shocking for the sense that you get to play through Six's final moments, and it gains an entire new meaning when you think about it when it comes to the overarching Halo story, as it was this moment of sacrifice by Noble Six that delayed the Covenant long enough for Master Chief to escape the planet and ultimately finish the fight. Truly a fitting send-off from Bungie's final Halo game. Wow, this is the third time I'm mentioning the Jak series in a countdown video. Could it have something to do with them being really good games and me recently finishing the entire series? Probably, but let's not dwell on that too much. In Jak 3, you start off the game by being exiled to the Wasteland by Count Vega for Jak's heinous crimes against Haven City, the main hub from the last game. Eventually you are discovered by a guy called Damas, and he seems like a pretty nice guy. And throughout the course of the game, you begin to learn quite a bit about Damas, and he begins to grow fond of Jak. You learn that Damas lost his only child, and that he used to be the leader of Haven City. Eventually, Damas dies while attempting to save Jak's life, and in his dying breaths, Jak realizes that Damas was his father the whole time. Vega then shows up and begins to brag a little bit, and mocks Jak for not knowing sooner. Jak then reaches the Precursors and is about to join them and ascend to godhood. It's very Wizard of Oz-like, with the whole large machines and booming voices. But I mean, these were the guys who did create essentially everything in the Jak and Daxter universe, so, you know, can kinda be expected. However, Count Asshole,
It's Vega!
Yeah, whatever.
shows up to ruin the day. He holds Jak at gunpoint and assumes his role of being a precursor and becoming a god. However, the precursors warn him to be careful what he wishes for. And then...
We are unhappy with your performance. If you had been a true hero, you would have stopped Errol by now.
Oh my god.
Yes, well, now we are even more angry, and we order you to avert your eyes, or we will,
Oh bother.
They look like me?
Yep, the precursors are Otzels, the little rodent-like things that the Dark Eco turned Daxter into at the beginning of the first game. The precursors are a complete contrast to what they were hyped up to be, but nonetheless are still immensely powerful. But wait, didn't Vega get the honor of becoming a precursor?
These creatures are the great precursors? And I wanted to evolve into the... No!
A little drafty, isn't it?
That is some sweet karma right there. Red Dead Redemption's story was one that many gamers love, and it's pretty easy to see why. The story of John Marston is an interesting story of redemption for a man who has done some pretty bad things in his past and just wants safety for his family. There are plenty of interesting characters and great moments all throughout the game, but none are more shocking or memorable than the game's finale. Reaching the end of the game, John had pretty much secured safety for him and his family, and he's about to ready to live a normal life. Until the military arrives. They begin to lay siege to the Marston household, making it quite clear that they don't plan on leaving anyone alive. John makes the decision to get his wife and son out before him, sending them off on horseback, while he stays behind to hold off the army while they escape. It is at this point that Marston makes his final, and unfortunately, no matter how hard you try, last stand against the army, and Marston eventually falls at the end of the scene. This scene works at shocking the player so well because essentially you don't get rewarded for your efforts throughout the game. Many gamers expected Marston to live and escape with his family, but in a way that would betray his character. His character is that of a hard man and a hard killer. Before the final showdown, he has a talk with his son where he basically says there isn't much that he doesn't enjoy shooting. And so, to die with a gun in his hand is a rather fitting end, if you ask me.
Is there anything you don't like shooting, Paul?
Well, I ain't met the thing yet, but as soon as I do, I'll let you know. You can even put it in one of them books you read.
Yeah, maybe I'll do that. Today, John Marston stopped shooting.
Now, as a series, you wouldn't think that Pokemon would contain many shocking moments. Many moments of the story are kind of expected and don't overly come out of nowhere. But there was one moment in the first 3 games that completely shocked gamers when they finally reached it. And that was that Blue is the champion of Kanto. When it comes to shocking moments in the Pokemon series, this one stood out above all the rest, as of course it was the original moment that shocked everyone when they played the first Pokemon games. The fact that your rival throughout the whole game not only beat you to the Elite Four, but beat them before you as well, was so shocking and set the stage for a perfect final battle for the title of the champion. Many champions have come after this one, some better than others, but this one was the one that truly shocked the fanbase and left a lasting impression on the entire series. Oh, hey guys, before we talk about number 3, please, would you kindly remember to leave a like down below this video and subscribe if you enjoyed and share it with your friends? 3 simple words. Would you kindly? Anyone who's played Bioshock knows the importance of these words, but just in case you haven't, let me give you a quick rundown of Bioshock's story. You play as Jak, an average guy whose plane crashes into the ocean and ends up in the underwater city of Rapture. There you meet a man by the name of Atlas, a rather charming Irishman, who helps you throughout the game with the only asking that you would kindly help him find his family. Eventually you make it to Andrew Ryan's office, who up until this point has been the game's main antagonist, for he was the creator of Rapture. At this point, Ryan drops a massive bombshell on Jak about his friend Atlas, and the whole question of would you kindly.
Stop, would you kindly? Would you kindly? Powerful phrase. Familiar phrase.
Would you kindly? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly find? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch?
Sit, would you kindly? Stand, would you kindly? Run! Stop! Turn. A man chooses. A slave obeys.
In this one scene, the gamer is thrown for a loop, realizing that for the entire game, they had merely been a pawn for Atlas, who is now revealed to be Frank Fontaine, and the actions they committed through the game was never their own. It's like Ryan said, a man chooses, but a slave obeys. Shadow of the Colossus is a game that loves to toy with your emotions. Throughout the entire game, you're meant to feel pretty terrible after you kill the Colossi, as some of them are more or less peaceful, harmless creatures that only attack you once provoked themselves. But Wander is doing all of this to achieve a noble goal, the resurrection of his girlfriend Mono, through striking a deal with Dorman, this omnipotent voice. So you can kind of understand what he's going for and respect his goals almost. However, in the final act of the game decides to spin the tables on you entirely, and the deal between Wander and Dorman is torn up upon defeating the final Colossi, Malus. And getting to Malus is no small task either, as Wander had to lose his one and only friend Agro, his horse, in order to reach this towering Colossi. And when I say towering, I really mean it. I mean, just look at it. It's literally a tower you have to scale to beat the game. However, that's not all. Lord Emon and his men then kill Wander because he has become possessed by the dead. Dorman then possesses Wander's lifeless body, and you get to play as this Wander-Dorman combo. And you can try to take out some of Emon's men, but there's no escape, and it won't amount to much. Emon then tries to seal Wander and Dorman off together so that the evil of Dorman will never return. And you are able to play through this whole scene as Wander, as you try and resist the pull of the portal Emon is trying to seal you in. There is a genuine sense of hopelessness in this scene, as no matter how hard you try, you will always fall and fail, and Wander will be sucked in. Also, Mono still hasn't woken up yet, so Wander is still trying to reach for her lifeless corpse. The final scene of Shadow of the Colossus is very like that of Red Dead Redemption, as the player is given nothing as a reward for pursuing through the game, and so it acts as a big shock. This is a moment that must be experienced to get the full effect of, and if you haven't played it yet, I definitely recommend that you do. Now, I'm sure that many of you just upon hearing this backing music will know exactly what I'm about to talk about, and that is of course, Final Fantasy VI. This game is by far the best in the series when it comes to outright shocking the player in my opinion, And yes, that does mean I think these moments are better than Aerith's death in Final Fantasy VII. Get over it. Many of the shocking or surprising moments in Final Fantasy VI come from a sadistic and terrifying court jester named Kefka Palazzo. This guy is not nice. He kills so many people on his way to the top and takes a rather sick joy in doing so as well. Upon reaching the top, he decides that his next course of action should be to, destroy the world, because according to him,
Destruction without death? Boring!
But I mean, destroying the worlds isn't something new we've seen in games. I mean, heaps of bad guys want to destroy the world or at least take it over. I mean, there's been Bowser, Ganondorf, Cyrus, the list goes on. So, what separates Kefka from these guys? Well, the sheer fact that, unlike the rest of them, Kefka succeeds in his grand goals. Kefka destroys the world. To put it shortly, Kefka betrays and murders his longtime accomplice Gestal, then pushes him off the peak where these magical statues preside. He then begins to move the statues around, pushing them out of alignment, and so the world begins to collapse as the balance has been thrown completely out of whack. This whole scene, the player is thinking, no way, he is not really doing this cannot be happening right now. But it is. Kefka completely screws up the world, and in doing so, almost the entire human population is killed due to the resulting cataclysm. Not only that, but almost all the main party are separated from each other. That includes Celes and her lover Locke. The distress of being separated from everyone, especially Locke, fills Celes with so much grief that she actually attempts to kill herself by leaping from a ledge. Suicide is not something you normally see in video games, retro or modern, and so for Final Fantasy VI to include this shows how devastating the effects of Kefka's plans were. All the while, the bastard is so freaking pleased with himself after what he has just accomplished. This moment is, in my mind, the most shocking moment to ever be seen in a video game, and if you haven't played it yourself, you really need to. This has been Charzzariah, and you know what's even more shocking than every moment on this list? The fact that I didn't mention Dark Souls once in a countdown. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.